Every football coach in the world will tell you the same thing. When the stakes are highest, when everything is on the line, you do not smile. But one man spent his entire career proving every single one of them completely wrong. There are players who win with discipline, with sacrifice, with grinding will. And then there was him, a man who dismantled the greatest defenses in football history while wearing a grin that made it look like he was playing in the street with his friends. To understand how that smile was born, you have to travel back to a neighborhood in Porto Alegre, Brazil, where football was not a sport but the only language everyone understood. The Vila Nova neighborhood in Porto Alegre was not a place that produced football legends. It was a place where people fought every day simply to stay standing. He was born the youngest of 8 children into a family where love was enormous, but money was almost non-existent. His father, a beloved local footballer himself, passed away when the boy was just 8 years old, leaving a wound that would shape everything. With no father and barely any shoes, the boy did what every child in that neighborhood did. He played. But when he played, something happened that made even the older boys stop and stare. By the time he was a teenager, the local club Grêmio had spotted something in him that could not be taught. But spotting raw genius and knowing what to do with it are two very different things. The path through the youth system was not paved with praise. He was told his style was too flashy, that he needed to simplify, that football at the highest level had no patience for showmanship. But every time they tried to sand down his edges, something inside him refused. The creativity was not a style choice. It was the only way he knew how to think about football. If you have ever wondered why the most remarkable stories in football always seem to survive the moments that should have ended them, then this channel is exactly where you need to be. Follow along, because the untold chapters of this story are only just beginning. His debut for the Grêmio first team arrived not with fanfare, but almost by accident. A young man thrust into a hostile professional game before the world had decided what to make of him. And then, within minutes of stepping onto that pitch, the noise changed. The crowd did not just react. They rose to their feet as if they had seen something they did not have a word for. His performances for Grêmio became impossible to ignore. And when the call came from Paris Saint-Germain in France, it announced him to a world that did not yet know his name, but was about to learn it very quickly. Paris in the late 1990s was not an easy place for a young Brazilian far from home, and the adjustment nearly swallowed him before his brilliance had the chance to speak. But on the pitch, in those brief moments when the world aligned for him, there were glimpses of something extraordinary. Defenders would track him, read his body, anticipate his move, and still end up facing the wrong direction. Barcelona came calling in 2003, and it was a transfer that felt less like a business transaction and more like the universe correcting a mistake. He was going to the stage that could hold what he was capable of. What happened at Barcelona over the next 3 years was not a football career. It was a transformation of the entire sport's imagination of what was possible. In 2004, he was awarded the FIFA World Player of the Year award, but the trophy almost felt secondary to what the world had already witnessed with its own eyes across that season. There was a goal against Chelsea in the Champions League, a free kick that bent around and then somehow back through the wall and into the top corner, that left commentators searching for language that did not yet exist. And then there was the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea, where he arrived as a name but left as a myth, guiding Brazil to glory with performances that felt less like football and more like a performance art that happened to involve a ball. His goal against England in that World Cup, a lofted free kick that arced impossibly over the goalkeeper from nearly 40 meters, was voted by fans years later as the greatest World Cup goal of all time. But the story of greatness is never only about the peaks. For every night, the stadium roared his name. There were shadows gathering in places the cameras did not follow. The years after Barcelona saw him move to AC Milan and then back to Brazil, and with each move came a question the world began to ask more loudly. Was the best of him already in the past? There were seasons where the injuries mounted, where the pace was slower and the critics grew louder, and where even the smile seemed to flicker for the first time under the weight of passing time. He returned to Flamengo and then to Atletico Mineiro and finally to Fluminense, and at each stop, something remarkable kept happening. The people who came to say goodbye ended up watching something that felt dangerously close to a resurrection. The strange truth about his legacy is that statistics cannot carry it. You cannot tell the story in numbers. The only way to understand what he meant is to watch the faces of the people who saw him play. He taught an entire generation of players that joy and excellence are not opposites, that you can be the most dangerous player on the pitch and still make everyone around you feel something close to happiness. Lionel Messi has spoken of him with reverence. Neymar grew up with his poster on the wall, and in the training academies of Barcelona and Brazil and across the entire world, coaches still play his footage, not to study tactics, but to show young players what it looks like when someone plays completely free. He was arrested in Paraguay in 2019 under circumstances that shocked the world, held for 5 months before being released, a chapter of his life that reminded everyone that even legends are human, that greatness does not protect you from the full weight of life. And yet when he was released, when he walked back into the light, the same smile came back. Not because nothing had happened, but because for him joy was never a performance, it was a belief. There are players who win everything and are forgotten, and there are players who change the way we feel about the game forever. If this story moved you even a fraction, then follow this channel, because there are dozens more untold journeys just like this one waiting for you. Stories of brilliance and survival and the beautiful game in all its complicated human truth.